The Amazon rainforest holds 390 billion trees across 2.1 million square miles. Less than 3% of its interior has been systematically mapped. What satellite imaging revealed in the unmapped zones wasn't wilderness. It was evidence of something that predated every assumption we held about isolation, about emptiness, and about what happens when civilizations vanish without warning. This isn't speculation. These are documented discoveries, and each one carries implications that extend far beyond the jungle canopy. Number 12. Ancient jungle metropolises in 2018. LiDAR scanning penetrated the forest canopy in a region previously considered impenetrable. The technology stripped away vegetation digitally, revealing the topography beneath. What appeared wasn't scattered villages. It was a sprawling network of geometric earthworks, roads, and plazas, covering an area larger than some modern cities. The structures were organized. Two organized agricultural terraces extended for miles. Water management systems showed engineering precision that suggested population densities archaeologists had dismissed as impossible for pre-Columbian rainforest societies. Conservative estimates place the population in the hundreds of thousands. Some researchers privately suggested millions. But here is what disturbed the team. Every site was abandoned. Not gradually. The evidence suggested rapid depopulation across multiple settlements simultaneously. Food stores left intact, tools in place. No graves in the expected quantities. The cities were empty, but they weren't ruins from natural decline. Something caused synchronized evacuation across distances that would have taken weeks to traverse on foot. And whatever that event was, it left no written record, no oral tradition, no explanation. Just geometric precision swallowed by trees. Number 11, Mercury-Poisoned River's 40 miles from the nearest documented mining operation. Researchers testing water samples in a tributary system found mercury concentrations 23 times the level considered safe for aquatic life. The readings were consistent across a 60-mile stretch of river that appeared from satellite to be untouched primary forest. Mercury doesn't occur naturally at these levels in water. It is introduced through human activity, specifically the gold extraction process used in illegal mining. But there were no mines visible from the air, no clearings, no equipment. The research team followed the contamination upstream for 6 days. The mercury levels increased the deeper they went. On the 7th day, they found the source, a network of concealed mining shafts dug directly into the riverbank. Hidden beneath intact canopy, the tunnels extended hundreds of feet underground. There were no workers, no fresh tool marks, no recent tracks, but the mercury was fresh in the water, introduced within the previous weeks. The team documented the site and left. 3 months later, a follow-up expedition found the tunnels collapsed and filled. Deliberately, the contamination in the water had tripled. Someone was still there, still working, and they had no intention of being found. Number 10. Ritual sacrifice sites in a lowland region accessible only during the dry season. A survey team cataloging biodiversity discovered a clearing that shouldn't have existed. The canopy had been opened centuries ago and never reclaimed by the forest. The soil composition explained why. It had been burned repeatedly at temperatures high enough to sterilize the ground. At the center of the clearing stood a stone platform, weathered but intact. Carved grooves channeled outward from the center toward the edges. Chemical analysis of the stone revealed traces of human hemoglobin, concentrated in volumes inconsistent with accidental injury. Surrounding the platform were 40 smaller stones arranged in a perfect circle, each carved with symbols that matched no known indigenous writing system in South America. The symbols were repetitive, obsessively so. The same sequence appeared on every stone, carved with such precision that the depth of each line varied by less than a millimeter. What made the researchers uneasy wasn't the evidence of ritual practice. It was the dating. Carbon analysis placed the site's last use within the previous 80 years, not ancient, recent. And the grooves in the stone weren't worn smooth by time. They were freshly cleaned. Number 9. Mass burial grounds. Ground. Penetrating radar deployed during an ecological survey detected a density anomaly beneath a section of forest floor that appeared undisturbed. The anomaly covered roughly 2 acres. When excavation began, the team uncovered layered human remains, hundreds of individuals buried without markers, without arrangement, without the ceremonial care typical of indigenous burial practices. The bodies were stacked. Limbs at inconsistent angles. No evidence of coffins, wrappings, or preservation efforts. Decomposition patterns suggested the burials occurred over a compressed time frame, possibly weeks, not years. Forensic analysis revealed something worse. The remains showed no signs of violence, no fractures, no weapon marks, no blunt force trauma. Cause of death was undetermined across the entire sample set, but every skeleton showed identical bone degradation in the jaw and inner ear. Damage consistent with prolonged exposure to low-frequency sound, at volumes capable of causing disorientation and internal hemorrhaging. There was no natural source for that kind of acoustic trauma in the region, and no historical record of mass death events in that area. Just silence in the archive, and 2 acres of the unexplained dead. Number 8. Entire villages missing from maps in 2014. A geological team chartered to assess mineral deposits flew over a section of the Amazon designated as uninhabited conservation land. During the flight, one crew member noticed smoke rising from multiple points in the canopy below. When the helicopter descended to investigate, they found a village, not an abandoned settlement. An active village, thatched structures, cultivated gardens, footpaths worn into the earth. Population estimated between 60 and 100 individuals. There was no record of the village in any governmental or NGO database. No contact history, no recognition of its existence in official maps. When the team reported the finding, cross-referencing with satellite archives revealed the village had been there for at least 30 years. Visible in every high-resolution pass, yet never logged, never documented. Follow-up investigation found 11 more villages in the same region, all unrecorded, all inhabited, all existing in a blind spot of official awareness that spanned 3 decades. The disturbing implication wasn't just bureaucratic oversight, it was intentional omission. Someone, at some level, had decided these places should not exist on paper. And for 30 years, that decision held. Number 7. Illegal mining death zones. Deep in the Madre de Dios region, law enforcement drones captured thermal imaging of a mining zone that hadn't been cleared through legal channels. The operation was extensive, covering over 200 acres of deforested land, with active excavation visible in real time. When a ground team arrived to investigate, they found the site abandoned. Equipment remained. Diesel generators still warm, food half consumed. But every human presence had evacuated in the hours before arrival. What made the site a death zone wasn't the illegal activity, it was what the team found in the tailings ponds. Water retention pools used to separate sediment from gold. Bearing ore floating in the ponds were bodies. 12 in total. No identification, no documentation of who they were or how they arrived. Autopsies revealed lethal levels of mercury poisoning. But the timeline didn't align with environmental exposure. The concentrations indicated intentional ingestion or injection. And the bodies had been dumped after death, not drowned in the ponds, but placed there. The mining operation never resumed at that site. But within a month, thermal imaging detected identical activity 40 miles west. Same pattern, same scale, same silence. Up to this point, these discoveries felt like isolated incidents, tragedies, crimes, and forgotten histories scattered across a vast and unforgiving landscape. But from here on, the story takes a far darker turn. What emerges in the deeper zones isn't just evidence of human activity gone wrong. It is evidence of something that should never have been disturbed. Number 6. Human bones. In riverbeds, a hydrological study mapping seasonal water flow patterns used sonar to chart riverbed topography in an unmapped tributary. The sonar returns showed dense clusters of objects, inconsistent with stone or sediment. When divers were sent to investigate, they found bones. Human bones scattered across a quarter-mile stretch of riverbed in concentrations too high to be the result of isolated drownings or burial site erosion. The bones weren't recent. Carbon dating placed them between 400 and 600 years old, but they weren't undisturbed relics either. Many of the bones bore tool marks, deliberate cuts made perimortem, around the time of death. The cuts were methodical, consistent, made with stone or bronze implements designed for defleshing. The pattern suggested processing, not burial, not battle aftermath, processing. And the riverbed wasn't a cemetery, it was a disposal site. What unnerved the research team wasn't just the volume or the age, it was the location. The tributary ran adjacent to one of the LiDAR-mapped metropolises, one of the cities that had been abandoned without explanation. The timeline aligned. The depopulation of the city coincided with the deposition period of the bones, which raised a question no one wanted to answer. Had the city been evacuated? Or had it been emptied? Number 5. Animal mutations near mines. Biodiversity researchers documenting species variation in areas adjacent to both legal and illegal mining zones began noticing anomalies. Frogs with additional limbs, birds with deformed beaks that prevented feeding, mammals with tumors visible beneath the skin. The mutations weren't isolated to a single species. They appeared across taxonomic groups: amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. The common variable was proximity to mining runoff. Chemical analysis of tissue samples revealed concentrations of heavy metals, mercury, lead, cadmium, at levels far beyond environmental background, even accounting for contamination. But the mutation rates were occurring too rapidly for generational genetic drift. These were developmental abnormalities appearing within a single generation. What disturbed researchers most was the behavioral change that accompanied the physical mutations. Affected animals showed no fear response to humans, no flight instinct. They would approach researchers, stare without moving, and remain stationary even when touched. In several cases, animals followed researchers back to camp and remained at the perimeter, unmoving for hours. One team reported finding a cluster of 30 deformed howler monkeys sitting in a clearing at dawn, silent, facing the same direction. When approached, none reacted. When the team returned 3 hours later, the monkeys were dead. All of them. In the same positions, no visible cause. Number 4. Strange nocturnal screams across multiple unconnected research teams operating in different regions of the Amazon. A consistent phenomenon has been reported: nocturnal vocalizations that don't match any catalogued species. The sounds are described uniformly: a prolonged high-pitched scream that rises in intensity, then cuts off abruptly. Duration averages 8 to 12 seconds. The sound doesn't echo naturally. It seems to be absorbed by the forest rather than reflected. Acoustic analysis revealed frequencies in the range of 3,000 to 4,500 Hz within human vocal capability, but sustained at volumes that would require mechanical amplification or anatomical abnormality. What makes this phenomenon unsettling isn't the strangeness of the sound. It is the response it provokes. When the screams occur, all ambient forest noise stops. Insects cease. Frogs go silent. Nocturnal birds halt their calls. The forest enters a state of total acoustic suspension that lasts anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. One research team recorded the phenomenon over 14 consecutive nights. Each night, the scream occurred at the same time, 2:47 a.m. On the 15th night, the scream didn't occur, but every member of the team reported waking simultaneously at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of something large moving through the canopy above their camp. Nothing was visible. Nothing was recorded on motion sensors. But in the morning, they found deep claw marks on the trees surrounding the camp. marks that hadn't been there the night before. Marks made by something with a grip span too wide to be jaguar, too deep to be sloth, and too high to have been made from the ground. Number 3. Unexplained forest die-off satellite imaging detected a circular region of canopy collapse in an area previously identified as healthy primary forest. The circle was precise, 400 meters in diameter, edges sharply defined. Within the circle, every tree was dead. Not dying. Dead. Leaves brown. Bark splitting. Root systems showing no signs of disease or parasitic infestation. The trees had died simultaneously, as if something had simply turned them off. Soil samples revealed no contamination. No abnormal pH, no introduced pathogens. Insect populations within the die-off zone were unaffected. The ground-level vegetation was still growing. Only the trees, specifically trees above 15 meters in height, were dead. When researchers felled one of the dead trees to examine the interior, they found the growth rings uniform and healthy up until the outermost ring. Then, abruptly, cellular activity ceased. No transition, no gradual decline. The final ring was incomplete, as if the tree had stopped growing mid-season. What made the discovery more disturbing was the pattern's repetition. Over the following 6 months, 3 more identical circles appeared in unconnected regions, each exactly 400 meters in diameter, each showing the same selective die-off, each appearing overnight. No explanation was published. The sites were quietly reclassified as ecological research zones with restricted access, but the circles kept appearing. Number 2. Lost expeditions in the last 40 years. At least 17 scientific and exploratory expeditions into remote Amazon regions have either failed to return or returned with incomplete teams and no coherent explanation for the losses. These weren't amateur treks. They were funded operations with experienced personnel, satellite communication, and extraction protocols. Yet entire groups vanished in areas considered logistically navigable. A botanical survey team of 8 entered a region near the Javari Valley to document unclassified plant species. They maintained radio contact for the first 4 days. On the 5th day, the final transmission was logged. We found the structure. It is not on any map. We're going inside. No further contact was made. Search and rescue operations recovered 3 bodies 6 weeks later, 22 miles from the team's last known position. The bodies showed no signs of injury, no evidence of disease, and no clear cause of death. The remaining 5 members were never found. Their equipment was recovered scattered across a 2-mile radius. Cameras were intact but contained no images. Every photo file was corrupted in a manner the data recovery team described as physically impossible without deliberate overwriting. 1 journal was found, waterlogged but partially legible. The final entry, dated the day before the last radio transmission, contained a single line. It is older than the forest. The trees grew around it. Nothing else. No description. No coordinates. No clarification. Just those 8 words and silence. Number 1. Restricted tribal zones. There are regions of the Amazon officially designated as restricted tribal zones. Areas where contact with indigenous populations is prohibited by law to protect uncontacted peoples from disease and cultural disruption. These zones are marked on maps enforced by law, monitored by satellite. But some of these zones aren't protecting tribes. In 2016, leaked correspondence from a now-defunct conservation organization revealed that at least 4 restricted zones were established not because of confirmed tribal presence, but because of incidents that occurred during initial survey attempts. In one case, a geological assessment team entered a region later designated as restricted. They reported finding structures, stone constructions, partially buried and overgrown, but clearly artificial. The structures were arranged in a pattern that suggested intentional design, but the design itself made no architectural sense. Walls that led nowhere, doorways opening into solid earth, stairways descending into flooded chambers with no outlet. The team photographed the site and collected samples. That night, Every member reported the same dream, standing in a circular room, watching something approach from below, through cracks in the floor. The next morning, all the equipment was malfunctioning. Compasses spun without settling. GPS units showed their location as shifting by miles, even while stationary. Radio communication produced only static interspersed with rhythmic clicking sounds that lasted exactly 3 seconds, repeated at 5-second intervals. The team evacuated immediately. The zone was restricted 2 months later. No official reason was given. No anthropological survey confirmed tribal presence. The restriction remains in place, and every attempt to overturn it has been quietly denied. These discoveries aren't folklore, they're documented, logged in databases that most of the public will never access, buried in reports that were filed and then forgotten. The Amazon isn't just a forest. It is a repository of events that don't fit comfortably into our understanding of history, of isolation, of what should and shouldn't be possible in places we've convinced ourselves are empty. But they're not empty, they never were. And what remains hidden in the unmapped zones may be far worse than anything we've uncovered so far. The next discovery goes even deeper, and some questions are better left unanswered until they find you first.